Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vinny Brusco Show.
And here we go.
C4 Pierre.
C4's in the house.
How are you, buddy?
Awesome, magnificent, and great.
I love it. I love it. Why are you feeling so good, man?
I just one day I was just like, you know what? I gotta stop having this woe with me mentality. I gotta just know that I'm the shit and just have that energy protruding through me constantly. I'm gonna go into every session, every encounter like, yeah, I'm the shit. That's it. Positive energy all the time. No more, I don't want to be here because it's a snowball effect. I'm not gonna do that no more. Every day's gonna be a great day.
That's this week.
That's this week. That's this week. I'm good right now. It's been good for like 3 or 4 days. So
What is that? Like that happens to me too, man. Like that happens to me too, where like all of a sudden, like you're riding this hot hand in roulette, and all of a sudden you just crap out, and you're like, what the fuck? I use two gambling analogies there, but whatever. You get my point.
yeah, I don't even know, dude. It's like, and I'm always trying to do constant reminders, like, you know, when people say, hey, how are you? And I'm like, awesome, magnificent, and great. So I'm always, you know, kind of, you know, manifesting like my energy. But then I come home and I'm like, fucking hate my life. So I'm like, all right, what? I just told this dude that to say, hey, what's going on? I said, I'm awesome, magnificent, and great. And then I come home and I'm like, I hate my life. I'm being a hypocrite. I'm lying. Like I can't do that. I gotta.
Well, I don't think you're being a hypocrite or lying. I think you're sending out, you know, there's two things going on there, right? There's the one thing of like, you are magnificent, great, and all of these things, and you know that, and you own that, and you believe in that. But then there's also the other side of it where like there's this internal dialogue that we have with ourselves where it's like, oh, am I? You know, and then also it's water cooler conversation too, where it's like you're not going to dive into, you know, you're not going to dive
Right.
into it with that guy. Like how, but then like how much of that, and I think about that kind of often, is like how many times are we in a situation where somebody asks us how we are and we give them some, you know, just
Generic answer.
Right.
And that's not fair to the person, because like, what if they need to hear that I'm going through some shit? And now I'm false advertising, like I'm awesome, magnificent, and great. And they're like, damn, I'm going through some shit. Maybe I need to be like, you know what? I'm awesome, magnificent, and great, but I'm going through some shit internally, but I'm gonna get through it. I need to throw that out there because, like I said, I never know what that person's going through. And by saying that, I might throw them in a deeper hole, like, damn, this dude is awesome. I'm here dying. Not knowing that I'm dying too. I'm just trying to mask it. So I feel like I need to be more transparent a little bit. But like I said, who wants to get into a whole dialogue? Because I know when I ask people how they're doing, and they're like, oh man, my girlfriend left me, and then my dog is pissing on the couch. I'm like, damn, I didn't sign up for this. So,
Well, it also depends on who and what it is. And it also depends on what role you want to play in their life, right? Like if it's the guy you're passing casually and he starts diving, but then there's also like there's something that, you know, and look at us, we're being such hypocrites because we're saying, well, maybe we should show up in that way, right? But then we're saying like, well, if someone else shows up that way, I don't want to sign up for that shit, right?
Exactly.
Like how hypocritical of us that we're like, well, maybe I should show up this way. Now someone is, because they're reaching out saying like, hey, you know, my dog's pissing on the couch, and we're like, oh, shut the fuck up, I don't want to hear your shit.
Exactly. Right. I know. So, but it's like, how much of that is just complaining bullshit, or how much is what's really like something worth discussing? Like, I'm gonna be honest, your dog pissing on the carpet is like, that's just growing pains. It is what it is. But like, if you're having internal, like, I feel depressed and I'm stressed, that's something we need to talk about. So it's like, I got to figure out like, what do I want to talk about? Because like sometimes I open the door and it's like, damn, like I have a friend right now. This dude for the last 3 months has been talking to me about how bad his girlfriend is. I literally heard everything from like cheating to raping to, I don't even know. I'm like, dude, I was already sold that your girlfriend wasn't good 2 months ago. And I've been hearing nothing but crap about her for the last how many days? I'm like, dude, you gotta, like, I don't want to hear about it anymore. Like, I was there for you to vent. I'm like, dude, are you with her or you're not? Because either way, I need to stop hearing about her. But, I opened the door like, hey, what's going on? And then it's been nonstop, like, vomit. I've been a human garbage disposal for like the last 2 months. And it
Yeah.
messes with my psyche. I'm like, I'm going home. I'm looking at my wife like, would you do something like that? Because he's, vomiting all this stuff in my energy. And it's like, I don't want to take up that mental real estate with negative energy. So I
Yeah.
really got to be conscious of what real estate I allow to come into my brain. Because like people plant seeds when you speak to them. People plant energy when you interact with them. People don't realize that, but they do. Like I've been around people, and when I leave, I'm like, damn, why do I feel like I left with less than? And I never understood it until I understood energy. Now I'm like, oh, that's what it is, because they're taking more than they're giving. It's not being reciprocated. So now I'm like, I gotta be really conscious of who I speak to. Like even my boy who was freaking vomiting all his relationship shit on me, I told him, listen, I'm not gonna answer your phone call anymore if you mention her name. With all due respect, I know I don't feel the way you feel about her, but listen, I cannot deal with, and he still does it, but I'll stop him. Like, stop it. Don't mention her name. I gotta be.
Well, there is a certain amount of bandwidth that we could give out, right? And that bandwidth gets
Mhm.
occupied by so many different parts of our lives, whether it be our family, jobs, and it trickles down to like the fickle things of like getting dressed and what you're going to wear and so forth and so on. So like when you're having bandwidth just being time or energetic vampires come into your life and they're just
Right.
sucking that out of you, it becomes that much harder. And like you said, like that becomes part of your diet. Like, people
Mhm.
don't realize, like, and I know you obviously as a trainer, people default to you for a diet, right?
Yep.
And a lot of them are probably anticipating, and I know how you train and I know the way you train is that like people anticipate like, well, eat grilled chicken and broccoli and you'll be fine. But they don't
Right.
realize that there's like an energetic diet as
Yes.
well that
100%.
contributes or takes away from your growth and your development, both physically and mentally.
And I mentioned before, like when I really took my training to another level is when I started studying neuroscience and how much the brain affects the body. Like even I tell people all the time when it comes to nutrition, I'm like, I'd rather you eat your calories than drink your calories because your brain processes a different way as opposed to you drinking it and chewing it. So, like you said, like you have to be in a good mental place to really get results from health and wellness. Like that's what I talk about first, because like even if you're not in a good mental place, even when you eat, like your body processes it differently. Like it doesn't digest. People don't understand like how like intricate it is, because like they say your digestive tract, your GI tract is like a second brain. And it literally is. Like if you're stressed out, like you don't get hungry, or maybe you know what I'm saying, your food, it's just different. Like it gets real technical when it comes to like how you feel mentally and how you are physically. So
Have you, being a trainer and kind of having all these different experiences and different people, right? Do you see like a common thread throughout all of them with whether it be just the mental affecting the physical? Like what's the common thread that you would suggest to people if they wanted to change themselves physically?
wow, that's a good question. And it's funny, I was talking to my boy today, and it's like because I was a personal trainer, like I was able to really like immerse myself in all classes. So like to be honest, I grew up in a poor class. And then, I became a trainer, and I worked on like one of the richest zip codes in America. So now I'm around these just ridiculously wealthy folks. So now I'm immersed in the rich class or the wealthy class. And because I was able to really grow my business, I was able to live like in the middle class. So now I'm immersed in all classes. And the one common denominator is the mindset. And I tell people all the time, like, the difference between being rich and being poor is the mindset. Like, when I was really when I started working as a trainer and I was making like 18 grand a year, it was hard for me to imagine making six figures. And that was the hardest part. Making six figures, to be honest, when I look back, was easy. The hardest part was believing I could make six figures. And that's the common denominator I see with the poor, the middle, and the rich class is that the rich class doesn't even think about like, I'm not gonna make it. Like they can have bankruptcy after bankruptcy. They can have, decline credit card, whatever it is. Like it's like, all right, what's the next option? you know, in the poor classes, it's like, I just can't do it. Like I hear him say, I can never afford that in the poor class. Like friends that I know that live in a poor environment from what society says. And they just have this mindset of like, oh, I can't afford that. I'm like, what? I don't hear wealthy people saying I can't afford it. They just say, how can I? And then the middle class is just like, I'll do just enough. So and that's the common denominator in all classes, the mindset.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I wholeheartedly subscribe to that, but it's very difficult to get past, the mental blocks that we create for ourselves, and that are brought down upon us, both from, like, whether it be family or friends or society or social classes or whatever, or expectations, right? What our norm is. So it's so hard to break out of that mold and step into the space of, things happening to you, for you, and through you, right? Things happening to you, you're the victim, right? Well, I can never afford that. I can't see how. Things happening for you, you start to shift, and it's almost like you're in the upper middle class, right? And then when things start to happen through you, and you realize that you're just, you're presenting this experience, right? And now you're able to manipulate the experience. Then you're in the wealthy, healthy mind class, where you're able to manifest and create.
Right. I mean, it's when people ask me, like, how did you get to where you are now? Like, I literally don't have a script. It was just like, once I started to believe that I deserve to eat here, or like when I was around my clients, and I said this to myself, when I started training, I'm like, if I can't become wealthy from being around all this wealth, then I don't deserve to be wealthy. And so when they would go to restaurants, or they would, do certain things that I, prior would think was out of my reach, I'm like, all right, I need to do that. You have a nanny? I should get a nanny. Or you went to this country? I should go to this country. You go to this restaurant? I want to try this restaurant. Why can I not try this restaurant? Why can I not do the things that you guys do? Like, there's nothing separating me from doing what you're doing other than my mentality. And once I got over that hump of like, oh, I can't, or to just, how can I mean, things change. Like literally sometimes, like I said, I look back, I'm like, how did I do that? And like, and now me and my clients are literally having conversations about going to the same restaurants and staying in the same resorts, which is crazy to me when I think about it, but I knew I wanted that. So, and that's when it changed, literally.
Yeah, it becomes a mindset thing. And then when you're able to kind of tap into the mindset of abundance, right, rather than scarcity, and you can live in an abundance mindset, then abundance is created. And that relationship that you have with it, it's rough, because there's the old mentality of like, fake it till you make it. And I really don't like that terminology, because you're starting off already anticipating that you're faking it. And then there's obviously the, act as if, which is a little bit easier on the ears. And the mindset behind it is live in that space as if you are that person that you ascribe to be, right? Because in, whether we want to say quantum physics, quantum experiences, that person already is in existence, right? You are now just stepping into the fold of that person and that person's experiences.
I mean, because when you read like the self-help books and the mental motivational books, they say, you have to believe it in your mind first, and then it manifests, physically. And I mean, I believe that. I mean, like, like when I really wanted to change my my business, like I was like, all right, what do the rich folks look at? Like, what's their vision? Like, how do they see things? I had to literally look at what they saw and become that. Like, all right, so they connect success with looking like this, speaking like this, and doing this. And also, let me just put out there, like, I didn't want to compromise who I was.
That's the part, right?
That's the part, because I did that in the beginning. I was, and like, so once again, we're being transparent. I wanted to be the non-threatening Black guy when I first started. Like, I was like, let me keep myself clean shaved, low haircut. I'm gonna wear, fitting clothes. Like,
you're wearing Lululemon.
Less, which I happen to love though. I love Lululemon.
So do I. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So I'm like, but let me do all that. And then I was like, all right. But then, there was still I still wasn't really achieving the results that I wanted and feeling like myself. Like I was wearing too many different hats, and I was like, all right, I don't even know why they're training with me. Is it because I'm non-threatening, or is it because I'm a good trainer? I'm like, so you know what? Let's start over. Let's just be a good trainer, and then you can go in however you want, because you bring substance. So that's what I did. I said, I'm gonna make sure that I have, like I looked at all the top trainers, who's the best what do you call it, trainers or celebrity trainers. What do they do? And I grasped what I got all the concepts, and I became that. And I'm gonna say I'm gonna take what they know, what they do, a little bit of everything, and then make it to my own with my own image. And it worked out really well for me.
What was that transition like? Was that like a moment of clarity, or like I can't show up in this mask anymore? Was it a line in your mind where you said this can't happen anymore, or was it just like the slow, gradual progression? Because there's this idea, this concept in psychology, it's called like the like the second self, right? And
Right.
and you basically create another character. You create a character of someone that you'd like to be, like emulate, whatever it is, and you step into this role, whether consciously or subconsciously. So it sounds like, the non-threatening black guy that you tried to show up as was a conscious thing.
Yeah. Well, one reason why I had to change it, because I was training a lot of clients that I didn't like, and I was trying to be non-threatening, so they would say ignorant things, and I would just be like, oh, okay, and I would just take it, and then I would be around my other black friends, and they would say certain things like that. I was like, wow, like that's amazing that you're strong like that. Like you're very outspoken, and I'm going back around these these rich, wealthy white folks and just allowing them to like kind of like, I don't want to say just be disrespectful, but kind of be disrespectful.
Cross
I'm
some
not.
lines.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I can't do that. Like I can't let them do this and then go back around my community and talk pro this and positive this, and then I'm not talking to talk. So I was like, all right, I can't let that happen. Like I'm training clients that I don't want to train. And then two was just as I started learning more about me and our history, like where we come from. Because let's be honest, like on the media, you would think that black people started from slavery. You would never know that we have like a whole history of like kings and queens and
Right.
like just empire, right? Just like 12 years of slave. That's it. That's what we got. It's like,
Right.
wow. So, and unconsciously, that's why I felt like I wanted to be the non-threatening black person, because I felt inferior. Because when you grow up as a black person, all you see is white Santa Claus, white Jesus, white president, white teacher, white doctors. So unconsciously, you feel like unless you're immersed in like that pro-black community, if that's not being reinforced, you think like they're better than us. So you want to be like them. So all right, how do I get in that circle? Because that's where it's at. And then, like I said, once I got knowledge of self, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not this kind of person that they put on TV, or they glorify on rap music or whatever that is, whatever stereotype is. That's not us. That's a drop in the bucket to where we really come from. So those two things, combined, like where I said I was like wearing all these different masks and not liking who I was around when I wore these masks, and then gaining knowledge of self, those combinations made me say I got to do different. And I was like, literally, it was like night and day. I went from like wearing non-threatening to like I'm like wearing pro-Africa shirts the next day. Like I brought like all these shirts. I went and got gold chains. I was like wearing gold grills. I'm like, I'm gonna be who I want to be. And if you don't like it, then fine. I know who I have on my team. And when I did that, like I still have clients to this day that still train me online because I'm that good.
Well, because you're that authentic, I think. I
Right.
think
That
it's,
too. Yeah, exactly.
you are a
Yes,
great
thank you.
trainer, but you also do show up in a very authentic way, very authentically yourself. And I think that authenticity, it stands the test of time. I think authenticity will persevere through all of it. And it's no different than being in the coaching world, maybe not physically, but kind of in the, the life coach world. People show up in different ways and wear different masks and carry themselves in different, and that's why I don't even like the term life coach, because I'm like, I don't wear the life coach coat very well. Like I don't feel comfortable saying I'm a life coach. Like, it doesn't resonate with me. And people have said to me like, no, you got to own that moniker. You have to own it. That's a great term. And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I get it. I understand that's what it's called, but I don't resonate with that terminology because it seems too grandiose for me.
I actually like journeymen. Like I like that. I feel like it's awesome.
Thank you. It's what I'm comfortable with, because I don't feel like I'm, a life coach. It's like when you take on that term and that moniker, it's like, I'm going to teach you how to live life. Like, no, I'm going to journey with you through life. We're going to journey together. I'm not going to teach you anything. You're going to figure that shit out on your own.
I mean, what I learned too is like, in order to be, I think, good at any job, like you can't be scared to get fired. And so like I was like, all right, you know what? I don't care. Cause I used to, I mean, like as a trainer, like a lot of trainers, they're very insecure. If you don't know, this is a very insecure job because you never know if you're gonna have a client the next day. Like you can be the best trainer one day and some new guy comes in with all these new, exercises and you're not the guy anymore. It's like, I want to do what he's doing. I've had that before. And so you hold on to your client, like you try to like helicopter them. Like what do you need? I want to be everything. I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm not gonna be that guy. Like I don't want to be that guy. I'm like, so I'm not scared to be fired. So I'm gonna tell you, oh, I want to be a boxer. I don't do boxing. So I'm not your guy. So if you want to box, find somebody else. Or I want a massage. I don't do massages. So I'm not your guy. Like I refer out all the time. Like this is what I do. And then or when clients ask me, like, what do you think about this? Do I look good in this? No, I don't like that. Did I lose weight? No. You look the same fat person that you've always been. Like I'm very brutally honest like that. And that's what you said. People love that about me, or they can hate it, but I don't care. Whoever's with me is with me because of my authenticity. And that's what I want. Like I'm just like so like people train with me like, wow, like how do you do that? I'm like, because I don't want to be a slave to these clients where I'm like, do you like me? I don't give a shit. I'm gonna be all right no matter what. So
that obviously is something that comes along with experience. What was the shift? I mean, I know your story, I know your background, but like for those people who don't, what was your shift into first off becoming a trainer and then kind of branching off and becoming your own personal trainer, not working under a gym or just in starting your own thing? What was that growth and transition like?
great question. I became a trainer like out of like being desperate. Like I had lost my job and I was like, all right. And probably it's funny because like I was working somewhere, I forgot. And in New York Sports Club, this guy was at New York Sports Club standing outside and I was walking past. He's like, hey, you want to be a trainer? I'm like, no, because I knew I could work out myself. I'm like, I don't want to train these bougie white people. Like, no, I don't want to do that. So then I lost my job and I'm like, Equinox. I'm like, all right, here we go. And I went in.
You went from, I don't want to train these bougie white people to training at Equinox, the bougie
exactly.
white people.
I know, exactly. Go figure. Right. So I go in there, like I'm like, hey, I need a job.
That was karma for you. You know that, right? That was like this karma.
And I always think about it because New York Sports Club would have been a great start because they're not as bougie as Equinox. Equinox is bougie.
Yeah,
so I'm
very
like,
bougie.
hey, very bougie. So all right, so I go in, I'm like, hey, I need a job. And they start asking me all these technical training questions. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that is. But I'm like, listen, if you give me a chance, I'll make you proud. And I really didn't keep my promise because I sucked as a trainer in the beginning because it was like, I learned that in order to be a good trainer, or to be a good salesperson in general, because when you're training, you're a salesman, you have to have good social skills and good technical skills. But if you had to pick one, I would say you have to have good social skills because you could be a great trainer, but if you're boring, people don't want to be around you. But if you have mediocre training skills, but you're a great person, people will want to be around you because you're like the cool guy, especially, in a bougie white community where they don't have any black friends. I'm the cool black guy who's in great shape. I'm like this pro athlete kind of guy, or this their rapper or whatever. They never, because I was like, whenever I'm around bougie white people, they don't have any black friends. So I'm like the voice of all black people. What do you think about LL Cool J? I'm like, I don't know. Like they always ask me these kind of questions. I'm like, all right, whatever. Like I'm not the spokesperson of black people, but I was like, I was a cool black person in their life, but they didn't have any black friends. So I really just nailed that home. Like I'm gonna be super cool, right? And super non-threatening, but super cool. So that was my whole spiel for like 10 years. I wasn't really a good trainer, but I was a cool guy. It wasn't until I got to, when I was Equinox, I went to David Barton and I had to step it up at David Barton because it was a whole different beast. Like now you're getting celebrities in there. You're getting like the 1% was in there. Like you talk about bougie, that was beyond bougie. That was like, drop my towel on the floor, you come pick it up kind of bougie. So I was like, oh shit. So I had to step my game up. And then when I was at Equinox, David Barton had this slogan called "Look Better Naked," which was a great slogan. So I would wear it outside and people were like, oh my God, I love that slogan. What is that from? I'm like, oh, I work at this gym. So I was constantly like doing free advertisement. And I'm like, I'm bringing all this money into the gym and they're taking like 60% of it. I need to do it for myself because even though it's a great slogan, it's because I look amazing with the shirt on that is drawing attention. So It's really me that's bringing attention. So I'm going to create my own slogan and look amazing in my own shirt and do my own thing. So I started to devise a plan on how to get out of Dodge. And that's when I really took my training to another level. I'm like, I have to be distinctive, because when I leave here, and I wasn't going to ask anybody to leave, but I had to make myself valuable. Like, what's going to separate me from everybody else, that when I leave, people are like, oh, I need to go with him. So I started working on it. It was like a 2-year plan where I would just education, professionalism, just really just driving it home. And once I left, it was just, all right, no looking back. And even when I was leaving, the manager was like, what can we do? Because, you know, as I was building my professionalism and my knowledge and my education, I was becoming a better trainer at that gym. So they didn't want me to leave. I was building my clientele. Like, what can we do? I'm like, don't even tell me what you're gonna do. I don't want to hear it, because I want you playing ACs. I'm leaving. Let me have a meeting. I'm like, nope, no meeting with the owner, nothing. 2 weeks here, I'm leaving. I didn't even want to entertain it, because I already knew I wanted to stay on my plan, and I left.
Yeah, that's super important, is staying focused on the plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's going to be detractors, and there's going to be all these little, I call them like voices, you know, in the woods, or voices in the bushes, like, hey, C4, hey, we're gonna give you a little pay, a little pay upgrade here, buddy. Why do you stick around for? Let's.
100%.
I know you're leaving in 2 weeks. Let's give us a month, right? Let's give us a month. You stick around, and then all of a sudden you're back in the trap, right? You're back in
And that's literally what they said.
You're back in the comfort, you're back in the convenience of life, right? And that's where, you know, things get very mucky, things get very, like, it's so uncomfortable to take that leap of faith on yourself and believing yourself and believing that what I could bring to the table is going to be bigger and better than this thing. Maybe not in actual scale rise, but like for myself, for my authenticity, it's going to be bigger and better. But you have to leave that comfort zone.
When I left, I literally had like 3 clients, and it was enough, literally, maybe, I don't even know if it was enough, but in my head it was enough to pay my bills, and that was it. Not eat, not do anything extra, just pay my bills. Like, I would have had the bare minimum, and I'm like, all right, that's enough. And like I said, I was not gonna ask any of my clients to leave, because I didn't want to solicit. I'm like, I didn't want to force them. So I was, hey, I'm leaving in 2 weeks, and I'm going. And see, misery loves company, and people hate to love, but they love to hate. Those 2 things can keep you in your place, because they're like, oh, you're gonna go, you're not gonna make it. Oh, because they want you to be miserable like them, because people are scared to be uncomfortable. They want to be in their comfort zone, and they want you to be in their comfort zone with them, make them feel good about what they're doing. It's like, no, I don't want to do what you're doing. There's no voice of reason here. I'm leaving. But they'll tell you stuff like, I would have people say, oh, don't go out there, you won't make it. And I'm like, well, when did you go out there and try? Never. So then how the heck are you gonna tell me about going out there and making it? People would give me advice, and I'm like, and I was like, oh, when did you do that? Never. But so what the hell you can't tell me about? And even if you did do it, your path will be different than my path. So you can't tell me. That's why when I give advice, I'm always like, listen, this is my opinion. I always make sure I put that disclosure. It's my opinion, but don't live by my word, because your path is going to be different. But what I did is this, and you take from it what you want. But I would get so much advice from people that never did anything I was going to do, which was crazy.
Right. It's the old allegory of the cave, right? It's like you only know what's inside the cave. And if you think if you're only inside the cave and you only experience it's every Disney movie, right? It's every Disney princess movie, right? It's if you only know your world and you don't expand outside of that world, you don't know the world that's out there, and you'll never really reach your fullest potential if you don't test your limits, right? And you don't put your skills and your knowledge to the test of who and what you could be. You mentioned that, you know, that when you were shifting into stepping out on your own, the big thing you leaned into was obviously becoming more professional and the best of your ability, right? And staying authentic, but staying professional, right? Those are very different things, right? But you need them both. And knowledge. What were you reading? What were you studying? What were you consuming at the time? Because I know it's like in my own journey, you know, all of a sudden, like there was this quench, you know, this thirst for knowledge, right? That I could just like reading and consuming and podcasts and you know, whatever it was, TED Talks or whatever it was. And just the consumption of that would be all day long.
Right. All day, literally.
What was that like for you? What were you taking in?
One thing, it was an expensive one, because it was like, I would find a certification, and then the person I was teaching certification, I would always want to talk to them and pick their brain. Like, so, you know, because like I said, when you get that hunger for knowledge, like it's just, I don't even know what the word is. It's like, you're like a vampire. Like, I want more, give me more. And so I would talk to them, and they'd be like, oh, try this. And I'm like, oh, what's that? And then it was just a rabbit hole. And then I go to that class, I'm like, well, and I would always get there early or leave later and talk to them. Like when they would go on breaks, because these classes were like, these certifications were like 2 days straight. So when we go on break, I'm like, what do you got? What are you doing, teacher? I'm going with you. And I would just talk to them. I made it a point to go talk with them instead of going to lunch. What do you go on to lunch for? I don't even care if you're vegan and I'm not vegan. I'm having vegan food because I want to hang out with you. And I would talk to them and just be like, oh, you take this? I got to do what you're doing because I like what you're doing. And so just that mindset just kept opening doors to new things. And I knew in my head, like when I started talking, taking class, I'm like, all right, it's going to be a while before I figure out my niche, because most of the teachers that were teaching were like in their 50s and they had been on the training journey for like, 20 some years. And I've really just been there for like a few years. I'm like, I'm really just starting to acquire this knowledge. I'm like, it's going to be a while before I figure out what I specialize in. But I'm like, I'm going to gather all the information I can and then make it my own little thing. So that was my purpose. Like, I feel like I had in my head, like when I get to 50, I'll really be this like Yoda trainer. And I've just been on that path ever since.
It's funny because the knowledge thing, right? I mean, as I hold up, literally, I could just show you right what's next to me here. 5 journals, right? Those are just like, just all different journals for different things. You can get, kind of frozen in that too, right? You can kind of get all consumed by that and then not act on it, right? You could learn till the cows come home and get every certification and journal and whatever it is and put all these things into place. But if you don't take action in that, right, what are you actually doing?
100%. And see, that journey, like it opened a can of worms, but then I was like, all right, now I'm learning about fitness, but then I want to learn about education. I mean, not education, like Black history. Like I want to go deep because Black history is only about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, and that's pretty much it. I'm like, and then I learned about like where we come from. But now that was a whole rabbit hole. And then I wanted like, all right, how do I change my mindset? Because I started studying neuroscience. So I'm like, all right, it's all about the mind. So now how do I learn about like mind stuff, which had nothing to do with just like fitness? It had to do with like self-help because I want to be wealthy and successful. So now I'm reading self-help books and wealth seminar books. So I have like 3 books I'm reading. And so now I dedicate my day to 30 minutes of fitness in the morning, 30 minutes of history in the afternoon, and then 30 minutes of self-help. And so now I'm just all day consuming. That's not even including the podcast and the YouTubes that I listen to. And it's just, but I love it though. Like I don't even know how people people are just lazy. Cause like people will ask me like, oh, what do you do to get this? I'm like, oh, I did this. Well, and then they keep asking me questions. I'm like, I just gave you the key point of what to look up. Let's go look that up and you'll find it. But people are lazy. And I'm like, and I've never been one to make excuses because I could blame my environment. I came from a stereotypical environment, like I came from a poor community, single family home, like I was around drugs and violence. I could have just, been a product of my environment, what they say. And I'm like, I'm like, no, remember I told you before, I wasn't good at doing illegal things. It just wouldn't, I sucked at it. Like, so I'm like, all right, we can't do this. We gotta be legal, guy. You're good at being legal. Let's work on that. So, but I could have just said, oh, I'm doing this because I live in the hood. But I was like, no. So it's hard for me to make excuses for anybody else when they're like, oh, the white man or this and that. And I'm like, dude, I was the stereotypical, what they say, black guy, I had tattoos, all the things that fit the description of somebody who would be like, the rapper or athlete. And I didn't do that. So I don't make excuses. What I say to myself is there's no problems, there's only solutions. So I only look at solutions. What's the solution to this alleged problem? I focus on the solution after that. And that's how I get through life.
Yeah, I'm reading James Clear's Atomic Habits. And I'm up to the point, actually, last night, and he's talking about how people, which it makes sense, intrinsically are lazy, right? Like we're intrinsically lazy because it's energy consumption, right? And what happens is we get caught up in these goals, right? And what we need to do to achieve these goals, and I want to know your perspective on this as a trainer, because I could understand it from a logical standpoint and it makes sense, but you need to reverse engineer the goal and reverse engineer it down to the most granular aspect of that. And then you also need to build it into your day in a way that is, that's going to be, I guess, momentum forward moving,
Mhm.
right? So like, you know, whether it be like sleeping in your gym clothes or having your gym clothes prepped and ready for you the next day, or like, you know, choosing the gym that's on your way home that's not 6 blocks or out of the way, so you don't have to go out of your way to go, and like reverse engineering this. How does that kind of shift that mindset of creating healthier habits, getting rid of, you know, what we're programmed to be, which is
Right.
intrinsically lazy for the most part, because again,
Mhm.
energetically, it makes more sense to consume. How does that shift into being like an actual trainer?
Because so when I train people, I tell them, listen, I'm not the ab guy, I'm not the booty guy, I'm not that guru. I'm trying to make sure that you are able to do what you do today, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now with your grandkids. So I'm like, what's your why? And we go through the whole gauntlet of why. And when I find out that why, I focus on that. So they say, hey, I want to play my grandkids. We focus on progressive things daily, little things, because progress is the ultimate motivator. And I understand that. So I always tell my clients, like, we're going to do things that are challenging but doable. Because they always have the mindset of, I can't do that. I'm like, I tell them as a coach, I'm like, do you think I'm going to give you stuff to see you fail? I'm like, trust me as your trainer, as your coach, that I'm going to give you things that you can succeed in. Because like I said, progress is the ultimate motivator. So I give them realistic things like, hey, we're going to do 15 squats a day. I've never done 15 squats. I know today's the day you do it. And when they do it, they take that momentum. Once again, progress is the ultimate motivator, and they ride that. And that my goal is not to just have small victories in the gym, but for it to manifest or carry over into everyday life. And that's what I tell them. I'm like, listen, what you do here, I need it to be organic. I need success. I need motivation to be organic. I need you when you leave here, you text me, guess what I just did, C4? Guess what I just did? And I'm like, yes, because you wanted to do that. I don't want to hold your hand. And I think people want their hand to be held a lot. Like, how do I do this? I'm like, you go out there and you do it. Like, I rarely ask for help. I'm always like, all right, let me just go do it. Let me just Google. Because I mean, you got Google and YouTube at your fingertips. Like, you literally can Google anything. You can YouTube, how do I make a 12-inch penis on a 6-inch penis, and you will find a video for it. Like, literally, you can find videos for anything.
You could have gone with like making a tiramisu. You didn't have to go
I know,
with.
exactly. I know, but it's so detailed. I know it's top of my head, which is creepy.
That's
So,
all right.
but maybe edit that part out.
Nope,
But
no
but you
edits.
but you can literally find anything. So people say, "Oh, how do I do that?" I'm like, literally Google it. Like, it's that simple. So I just try to give little small victories because I really harp on progress is the ultimate motivator, and we're gonna make progress every time you come here, and it's gonna manifest into your daily life. I don't want to hold your hand. I tell them I'm not holding your hand, and they
It's
understand that.
it seeps in, but it begins to seep into other areas of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it
Yep.
becomes an inertia and a momentum that you
Mm-hmm.
ride out for as long as you can, because as we said in the beginning of this, all of a sudden, like you crash and you're like, wait a minute, this is not how it goes. Like I know better than this. Then why am I
Mm-hmm.
also in this space? And it goes to the point of, you know, people do know that they could just Google it, but they kind of do want to have that person in their life. They could say, hey, C4, how do I do Romanian deadlifts, or how do I do Turkish get ups? And it's like you could literally Google that and find out in 33 seconds, but it just has a different energetic, you know, feel to it when it's coming from someone, you know, that they trust, that's authentic, that shows up in a certain way in their life, that now they could, you know, pick your brain about it. But it's
I
important
think.
as a coach or as a guide to
Yep.
not hold their hand to that process.
I think people put too much pressure on results, and like I tell my clients, like, you're not held hostage to anything I give you. If I say do 12 deadlifts and you can only do 8, then do 8. And I'm good with that. And so like we do stuff, and it's like, look at what we're doing. Like to leave my job at like whatever age I was with a family that might be frowned upon, to like what you're doing. You're a journeyman, like you have a family. Like people might say that's a horrible time to start your whatever your passion.
And
Like
I would say them, they're absolutely right.
exactly, right? But you gotta, you know what I'm saying? Like you gotta be willing to do those things to to grow.
Sure.
And I think people like being, I mean, like we said, being in that comfort zone. I'm like, listen, it's okay to fail. Like you want to do just enough not to fail, and you don't do enough to make it, you know, to from out of mediocrity. I'm like, but it's okay. Like, you know how many things I failed on? I had a vending machine business. That thing was horrible. I spent like $10,000 worth on vending machines, and I don't even know where they are. I tried to do seriously, I had to leave them at the store because they were like, come get them. I'm like, I ain't coming to get those things. Them things are heavy. Keep them. Failed. I tried to do a app. I called this company. I'm like, hey, I want to do an app. They gave me this price, which I thought was the whole price. And I gave them all my money. I literally maxed my credit card. Like, all right, I'm done. I'm so hyped. I'm getting my own app done. I said, all right, we finished the service. Now we got to get into the meat and potatoes. I'm like, well, how much that going to cost? Another 28,000. I'm like, I don't have 28,000. I gave you everything I had. I had to leave it on the table. But I'm okay with that. You know how many ventures I set out to do and it didn't work out? But I've learned to be okay with that. Like, it's not a fail, it's a lesson. And I learned, and I'm still here. I'm still doing well. Like, I haven't missed a beat. Like, I'm not like I'm homeless after spending all that money. I'm still doing well because my mindset is still the same. Success, winning. People don't want to take that chance.
Well, I think a big part of it is a feeling, right? There's an energetic feeling to successes and failures. And when you can shift a mindset and say, this is a learning lesson, and you could extrapolate from that experience, I think overall the feeling of that, right? What it felt like when you were hyped up to build up the app, what it felt like when you felt like the vending machine route was going to be the big thing for you. I think there's an energetic field and an energetic feeling to that is what you're supposed to be taking away from it, and you're supposed to use that as a guide into the next experience, so that when it does arise, you could navigate those waters a little bit differently, but you still have the experience of success and the excitement behind it, and you also have the experience of the failure that can come along with it, and now you're able to navigate in a different way based off of those two experiences.
Experience could be a great teacher if you pay attention, or it could be really annoying if you don't. And those experiences, when you lose, for me, whatever that amount was, you feel that like a Mike Tyson punch. Mike Tyson once said, everybody got a plan until you get punched in the face. When you lose all your money, that's a Mike Tyson punch to your bank account, like knockout. So when you go through that enough, you start to become numb to it. So now it's like, all right, like I'm like, and also because, like I said before, I'm not good at doing illegal stuff. Everything I've done was hard work. So I know what I did to get here. So, all right, if I lost the money I made, all right, go back to the drawing board, which may suck, but it's like, I know what I did. I can just retrace my steps and go back to the grind. It's not like I did some sneaky, shady, move to get over, and I cheated somebody out of $10,000 and I put it on this credit card to, do this, and then I lost it. And it's like, damn, who am I going to cheat again? No, I was honest about how I got the money, go back to the drawing board and do it again. And when you do it, when you worked hard, you can feel good about, all right, let me do it again, because you know you put into it.
Well, you also have the tools in your toolbox to default to,
exactly,
and experiences based off of that, and that's the hard thing too, though, right? You reach a certain landing in things and a certain comfort level with anything, even successes, and you almost are like, you kind of sit in that space for a little bit, and you realize, like, I gotta get, now it's time to like get back and grind, and then we kind of, because the brain seeks novelty, right? The brain seeks new experiences. We try to reinvent things for ourselves. And then when that starts to kind of putter out a little bit, you're like, oh shit, what do I do? And it's just like default back to the feel. For me, it's defaulting back to feeling, defaulting back to what I know does work for me. And now, like, every day I set my alarm for 4:30. Now, I haven't woken up at 4:30 in the morning to work out or do yoga or meditate or do breath work in, I'd say, 2 months, right? But I still set the alarm every day because the next day might be the day that starts the whole thing all over again. Because I know that waking up at that time worked for me, right? It worked for me at that time of my life, and it was very beneficial for me. Now, maybe it doesn't work for the next day, or maybe it doesn't work for the next year. I don't know. But if I don't set that alarm every day, I won't give myself the opportunity to wake up and step into that feeling of what worked before.
We get so caught up in the moment, and like, just because you lost doesn't make you a loser. So if you lose the day, that doesn't make you a loser. So like, I don't beat myself up about it for the most part. Like, if I don't do shit, I'm like, I own that shit. I'm like, I ain't doing shit today, and it's just gonna be, I'm not doing shit today, and that's it. But when you look at it, like I say to myself, like, all right, and I'm not trying to justify not doing shit for months on end, but if you don't do shit for 2 months, and then all of a sudden the light goes off, and then you kill it for the next 30 years, what's 2 months? So
Sure.
I just always say, like, don't live in the moment. Like I said, I'm not justifying being lazy, but don't beat yourself up about it, because everybody's journey is different. And like I said, if you follow this passion, it could end up being, a lifetime of, whatever it is, positive energy, opposed to just come. I mean, we talked about it before. How many people go to their grave with that, whatever it is that they could have did? And when you talk to old people, that's the one thing that they talk about: regret. I wish I would have done this. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna do all that shit. Whatever. Literally, like, when I was before I became a trainer, my going back to job, my comfort zone was being a stock boy at any retail store. So whenever I lost a job, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to Gap, I'm gonna go to Express. Even when I was working as a trainer at Equinox, I was working at like Best Buy as a stock boy, because I was like, if this doesn't work out as a trainer, I'm gonna be a stock boy. That was always my go-to. What I did was I got these 2 tattoos on my hands. So like I can no longer do corporate America. I'm gonna do training, and that's it. So I left Best Buy. I'm like, I'm gonna be a trainer. I'm gonna get these tattoos that say I can't do corporate America anymore. There's no going back. There's no going back to comfort zone. And I never looked back. But I had to force myself to not go back to what I already knew. And it's easy to go back to, even when I came to Charlotte, it was like, Dad, like, what am I doing? What am I not doing? I'm like, all right, maybe I gotta go outside my comfort zone, which is like going on Instagram and stuff like that. And I hate talking. I despise it. I loathe it. Like, I'm not gonna listen to the interview after this, because I hate hearing myself I hate hearing my voice.
You and me both.
So, but I would do it, and because I had to go outside my comfort zone, and like, and now I embrace it. Like, when I know it feels uncomfortable, I'm like, oh, I'm doing it. Like, I get excited to do stuff that's uncomfortable for me, because I know it's growth there.
Yeah. I think that's an important lesson. And as a father, especially, is to instill that into our children, to, like, again, not beat them down into the experience, but recognize the experience when it's there, and give them the perspective almost, and be the Google for them, and say, like, here's this scenario, right? Here's this scenario. Here's this feeling. It's going to create it. It's going to surface again throughout your entire life, right? It's going to wear different scenarios and different costumes and different outfits. The feeling is going to be the same.
Yep.
Here's the answer to the feeling, right? And allow them to immerse themselves in it, but then also realize that there's a way out of it.
Listen, when we go out to eat, I tell my kids all the time, like, I need you to try new foods. And I tell them, you don't have to eat it, but at least try it. Because like, when I grew up, like, if my mother cooked it, or if she purchased it, for sure, I better eat that joint. Like, I remember sitting at the table for hours, because my mother was like, you're not getting up from that table until you finish eating that food. My kids don't have to do that. I'm like, listen, try the food. If you don't like it, then we get what you want. But I want them to try it. But like, that's how we live in my house. I'm like, I tell them all the time, like, don't take my word for it. Whatever I say, I'm like, do your research. Like, I want you to experience it for yourself. Like, I don't want you to be, like how I grew up, where it was children should be, seen, not heard. And if you got your ass whipped, there was no questions about why you got your ass whipped. When my kids, get reprimanded, or to get, in trouble, so to say, I'm like, do you know why you're getting in trouble? And we go over. I'm like, do you think that was a good thing to do? And I'm like, I tell them, don't answer me because you're scared, or because you're afraid of the consequences. Answer me because it's what you believe. Sometimes they give me straight answers. I'm like, why did you do that? Because I wanted to. I'm like, I respect that. You wanted to. Like, I want them to be open, because like I said, I grew up in the era where I said children be seen, not heard. And I grew up like that. I grew up compromising my voice. I was never outspoken, because unconsciously it was just like, keep your mouth shut when you're in public. I didn't know until later on, but that compromised me from my mom telling me, just be quiet. And I remember asking my mother one time, like, can you ever be wrong? And she was like, no. Crossing the street from McDonald's, she's like, nope. I'm like, all right, I won't ask any question anymore. I closed my mouth at 6 years old. That was it. No more questions asked. My kids are not like that. I'm like, ask. Even when my son, my youngest one, he asked a lot of questions. He asked the most random questions. Like, when you were 3 years old, did you wear gray socks? I'm like, what? I don't even know. But I'm like, I told him, I'm like, don't ever change. Even when daddy gets annoyed, don't stop asking questions. I may tell you stop asking me questions, but I want you to be who you are. Like, if you're a person that asks questions, please do that. I want them to have that freedom, that experience that I wasn't able to have.
Yeah, it's such a, because children will test you in the best
Oh
ways.
my God.
But it's so important for them to not make the compromise of who they are. And you know, my daughter, we had a good streak of Sunday mornings eating a big bowl of cereal and watching Star Wars Rebels. Now, there's a Boba Fett helmet in here, and I'm a huge Star Wars fan. But I walk on that line, like, does she like Star Wars because she likes Star Wars, or does
Right.
she like Star Wars because Dad likes Star Wars? And
Right.
and obviously there's going to be influences along the way, and better than be from her parents who love her and want her to be herself. But that starts to go away, and you see it now. She'll be 6 this week. You start to see that more as she grows up, the influences from culture or from her parents or from family or from friends, and she starts to make these small little compromises in her own identity. And it's so important to provide that space for your children to show up authentically, and to say, like, no, I could be wrong. You know what I mean? Like, my daughter asks me questions and I'm like, I have no idea. Let's find out together. Like, let's do the research together.
Right.
Let's have the experience of getting that knowledge together, rather than me saying, like, oh, well, and having an ego about it. Right. That's a huge part of it, is the managing of your ego.
Sure. I mean, I grew up in a society. I mean, I think we're in a society where it's like we're like zombies. Like, we're programmed basically. And it's like, I only see that freedom when I see little kids. Like, little kids are just, they don't even, like, it's just like, I can take away everything and they still find, like, my kids will play with cardboard boxes. And I'm like, wow, like, and then you get older and it's like, and I still trying to figure it out. Like, what happened? Like, what happens to our freedom when we get older, where it's just like, we're just programmed, like, we got to do this, we got to do that, and we got to do that. And it's like, I wanted to clap my hands and be like, wake up, everybody. Like, I want to be more human. We're not human anymore. We're just robots walking around, and there's no, especially in New York, it's like, I mean, there's no interaction. Just like, I got to get to my job, I got to get home. It's like, there's nobody stops and talk. I'm a stop and talker. You see me in the street, I'm like, hey, I will literally, my wife, I'm like, I'll be home in like an hour. And then 3 hours later, like, where are you? I'm like, I ran into Vinny, and we started talking, and we talked, and I'm cool with that. Like, I'm going with it, and it's cool. But it's like, people are like, I gotta go home. I gotta get. It's like, we get stuck in that rat race, and like, I don't know. I notice it, but and it's hard once you're awake. So they say it's hard to go back to sleep. Like, now I see it. It's like, oh man, like, it's kind of frustrating. But whatever. I went up with a tangent there, but.
No. I get it, because again, you get to see being a parent, and I reference this a lot, but you do get to see the world again through a child's lens if you are paying attention, and it is something that's very invigorating, and it's like, it's another confirmation of how we've gotten away from who and what we are in our essence, right? Because we do develop an ego, and in that ego and that development of that mask, or that ego, that character that you develop, you start to interact with the world and the people in it in a different way, and you lose the essence of who you are and how you show up in the world. And that's one thing, as a parent, you get to see this little human create themselves and start to step into the world. And I agree with you. And it is a hard space to be in, because when you're around it, and it's definitely something that's being pushed on a societal level, and you see it, it's kind of like you're screaming on deaf ears, and you're like you said, like, you sort of like, wake up, everybody, like, hello. Like, you're not seeing that. Like, you're on this like you said, this rat race towards what is it? What are we all chasing?
I mean, it's like, I'm telling you, you never know what your words do for somebody. But like, when you did that little podcast the other day about the book you're reading and the line, I was like, yo, that blew my mind. I remember a while ago, this guy gave this comparison. Not that I'm saying gay people are bad, but it's like, if we were in a house full of gay people and we were the only 2 straight guys, we would be looked at as crazy, because that's the narrative right there. And it's like, whenever you go against the narrative, you get looked at as crazy. And I hate that, because like, I think that's a lot of why people just do, like, I'm just doing what everybody else is doing. It's like, no, like, I've always been fascinated by how you have billions of people and everybody has a different facial feature. Like, everybody looks different. mean, you may have somebody that looks similar to you, but everybody's different. That just fascinates me. And that's why, like, when I train, I don't have a one size fits all, because I'm like, everybody's different. I tell my clients, I'm like, even if I cloned you, I will train your clone differently because everybody's different. I'm never going to give you the same workout. It's going to be something, even if it looks similar, it's going to be something maybe different. I'm going to make sure that even when I give you nutrition, I'm going to say, hey, try this, because, and even, like I said, even if you're your clone, and it's just amazing how we're all different, but we're all acting like the same, program at times. It's like, it's kind of annoying sometimes.
The idea of conforming to like social norms
Yeah.
and expectations and compromising your own individuality of thought in order to fall in line with what groupthink would be, right? Or fall in line with what everyone, the narrative of the collective is saying, in order to not stand out and kind of be ostracized.
I mean, I read this joke. I'm trying to tell it real quick. It's the truth and a lie walking down the street, and the lie tells truth, hey, I bet I can swim faster than you. And truth is like, what? I know I can swim faster than you. And the lie is like, all right, well, there's a lake right here. Let's go swim. So they take up their clothes, they get naked, and jump in the water. And sure enough, truth is killing a lie in the race. The lie sees that he is getting killed in a race. He goes back, takes the truth clothes, and tries to get away. The truth sees that the lie is running away with the clothes, and he goes after him. And so now what you see is the lie, well dressed up, getting chased by the naked truth. People rather believe a well-dressed lie than the naked truth. And like when I heard that, I was like, yes, that is society. Nobody wants to hear the naked truth. They rather a well-dressed lie than the naked truth.
Yeah. Again, it goes into the idea of the comfort of that all, right? And being in a space. And I know you're someone who's experienced and practiced a variety of different religions throughout your life. From obviously now studying, Buddhism to, Judaism, Christianity, Muslim, correct?
Yep.
What was the mindset going into experiencing different religions? Because I think that's something that most people honestly would frown upon, right? I mean, I know they're probably their structural buildings would, if we took Christianity, we said, oh, by the way, this person's going to be Muslim, this person's going to be Buddhist, this person's going to be Jewish. I know my grandmother, God rest her soul, she married my grandfather. She was Jewish, he was Catholic, and she had to sign off on all types of waivers and documents stating that she would raise her kids Catholic, and that was what she had to do in order to that's what the rules and the regulations that were instilled upon them. So what was the mindset going into experiencing different religions? Because I don't think that's not a very common thing for people to experience.
Right. Well, Christianity, and this is for the most part,
Were you born and raised Christian? Okay.
Yeah. So, that's like the foundation for Black people. Like, you Black, automatically, you go to church. You can break it down a denomination, Pentecostal, Baptist, but it's Catholic Christianity at the essence. So that's what I did. So then as I like, once I started, once again, knowledge, I'm reading the Bible. I'm like, now I'm going through it. I'm not just taking scriptures, because, pastors like to give little tidbits. And I'm like, all right, well, what does the scripture stem from? I want to read the whole scripture. Like, what is this talking about? So when a pastor would give the scripture, I would write it down. I'm like, now I'm going to read the whole book of whatever the scripture comes from. I'm like, wow. I'm like, the way the pastor just told the scripture, it's not really talking about what the book says. So after a while, I'm like, all right, I'm not being told the whole story. And then I looked up, like, how many religions are there? And there's, I think, 2,600 religions. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, well, 2,600 religions, and they all believe they're right. So I remember one time my pastor said, Jehovah's Witness has a great idea, but they don't do something right. I'm like, well, who the heck are you to judge Jehovah's Witnesses doing the wrong way? Like, they think they're doing the right way too. I'm like, well, I can't go around here saying my religion is the best if I haven't experienced other religions. And so that was my objective. I'm going to experience all religions and see what the common denominator is. Like, I want to be able to be immersed in all of them and say, all right, what is the common denominator? Is there truth to any of these things? And what I found out, there's a higher power that people believe in all of them. Somebody, whatever you want to call it, Yahweh, God, Jehovah, there's a higher power. And if we can all disagree on that, we can all, like, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's just the higher power. You can break it down however you want to, because meditation and prayer are literally the same thing. Muslims and Jews are doing the same thing. They just call it have different words for it. So we're all doing the same thing. We just want to be, I guess, individualized, but it's all the same. A higher power that we believe in. Let's meet there, and we take it from there, and we're good. And I want to experience that.
Yeah, I mean, and it breaks off into different things, right? Like I have my sage and my Palo Santo in here, but it's no difference.
Yep.
Walking through church. It's all the same thing.
Exactly.
If I sage my house, it's no different than when the priest came in and threw holy water in the rooms and was saying doing his thing.
Yes.
So there's no difference to it, right?
No.
And it goes back to, our point earlier of it's a feeling, right? It's what invokes inside of you that comes out, and that's what emanates, and that's the important lesson to carry throughout. It's not about, what it's wearing or what you're calling it. It's a feeling of what is being presented to you at that time. And that's what you need to carry through.
I hated going to church. Like when I was a kid, my mother made me go, and I was just like, this is so boring. I went to Catholic school. And then when I got older, like unbeknownst to me, it's like, oh, we got to go to church. Kids, we need to go to church. And my kids would be miserable. And I was like, you like going to church? No. I'm like, well, we got to go because I don't even know why. It's because I felt like the right thing to do. And then I was like, why are we going to church? Like, I don't even know. I don't want to get up in the morning. I don't want to get up. Like, why? And then I start reading the Bible. I'm like, I don't even need to go to church. Bible literally says you don't have to, with 2 or 3 meet. That's what church is. I'm like, it's 4 of us. Church is home. Like, what am I doing? Like, I don't need to go to church. Why am I getting up this early? The pastor's coming in with his own parking spot. I'm looking for parking around the block. This is horrible. Like, why am I doing this? I'm not doing it to my kids no more. We're staying in bed at Sunday, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. But it was like, that's like, why? How many times are we doing stuff in life and we like, why are we doing this? Why do we go to this job that we hate every day? Why are we dating this person or why are we married to this person that we don't even like? Why are we doing anything? Because we're scared to make a change. I'm not scared to make a change. I always tell my wife, I love my wife. She's like the greatest thing that ever happened. But I'm saying, I always say, listen, if you ever go crazy, I'm leaving, taking the kids with me. I don't care how long we've been married. I'm out of here. Like, I don't want to be with you because we have kids. You know how many couples I know are together because they have kids and miserable? I'm like, you think the kids don't know that because you sleep in different beds that you're not together? Like, that's horrible. I don't want to live my life just doing. Like, the feeling, I want to feel. Like, I don't want to be in something and I'm going to it and like, oh man, I gotta go to this freaking place. I gotta meet this person. Like, I don't want to do that. If I start having those thoughts, those conversations in my head, I immediately cancel. I don't care. Like, if I'm going to see you and I'm like, dang, I don't like going to drive to New York to see Vinny. Why am I doing that? I'm canceling. Vinny, I can't do it. And if you don't respect that energy that I'm sharing, then it's all good. But I got to make sure I respect that feeling, and I'm connected to that feeling.
Yeah, the church thing's big because I get that, and I went to Catholic school, pretty much my entire life, and I think there's a big part of it that because it's forced on, like we used to have to get like cards signed by priests to prove we went to church.
Yeah,
so, like I have to, like it's like you are stripped, and I understand. I understand what and again, there's a business element and you can go down that rabbit hole if you want to, but I understand what they're trying to instill in people or instill in the youth. And I get that and I can respect that. But I also think that, by having it hammered into your mind, and I think there are definitely some beautiful things about Catholic school. And even if it's just the keeping people in check and rules and I value that. And I do appreciate, going to Catholic school, I mean, I wouldn't have changed it in hindsight. But I think when it comes to the church element of things, having it not come from an authentic place, and it's hard when you're a child, but like my daughter, like I said, she'll be 6 this week. She said to me not that long ago, she's like, when coronavirus is over, she's like, and when I go to church, I'm going to take it more seriously.
Wow.
And like,
that's awesome.
To me, I was like, and we are the holiday church people, you know what I mean? Like, I've had some beautiful moments in church of like peace and calm, and it didn't come from a priest's sermon. It didn't come from anything other than me being present as possible at that time, right? And that's where I felt God the most, is when I was so present within myself that nothing else around me was even happening. And to hear my daughter say, I was like, well, maybe I need to go and show up in that regard for her, right? And maybe that's something I need to give her and let her experience it. But it comes from an authentic place, right? Whereas when we're forced into these situations and forced into church or whatever it is, you start to build this odd resentment towards it.
Yes, exactly. And that's what happened is that like I didn't want my kids to have that feeling like I hate church. Like I wanted to go from an authentic place, not because I felt like it was an obligation to get up and like, all right, come on, guys. Like it was never like, let's go to church. It was never like that. It was like, all right, come on, like you're in the bed, it's like looking like, all right, we got to get up in 10 minutes at least, like, because we got to get ready. It's like, I want to do it because I want to do it. And like I said, I don't want to add to that list of things that I did my whole life because I felt like I had to do it. And you know, like I was going to church from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Like I was like immersed in it. Like I got to do it because you know, and you know, now I believe hell is no lower than your feet and heaven is no higher than your head. Like it's all your perception of life, not even about like going to hell and you got to do this and repent 7 times. Like I don't want to force people to be good. Like I don't think you need to force people. Like I think everybody knows, like if you kill somebody, that's a bad thing. I don't think we need, that's unspoken agreement, right? Like we know that. Like so I don't want to force it on anybody, and I don't want to force it on my kids. And so once I got in that mindset, like I want you to go. Do you want to go to church, guys? No. All right, we'll stay home because neither do I. So we'll do it at home and we'll do our own thing. And that's just where I'm at.
Yeah, and again, it goes both ways because you don't want to project your own do's and don'ts onto your children, right? You don't want to project what you want to be doing or not doing onto them. But at the same time, when you're showing up in a unauthentic way, or and you're just like you said, just going to church for 12 hours a day just because you feel like that's what you need to be doing at that time. It's putting like this very strenuous energy towards something, and the result of that is never, in my experiences, it's never, it doesn't play out the way you think it's going to be, right? Like even in like a spiritual element or a physical element or meditating, it's like this really fine line. That's why yin yang is curved, right? Because it's an ebb and flow of energy, male and whatever you want to go down with it. But the idea is that life is not just this linear thing. It's not black and white. It's like this ebb and flow of both, right? And when you put this like strict energy towards one thing or the other, you're disrupting the balance of life. It also goes the other way where you can't just like fuck everything,
Right, exactly.
Like it's a balance to that. So that's where it's hard. It's hard to navigate those waters. So from Christianity, what was your next religious stop?
Then I went to Jehovah's Witness, and then I went to Judaism, and then I did the Muslim thing, and then now I'm at Buddhism. Yeah. And see, Christianity kind of left a bad taste in my mouth because, like I said, I was a what they call the armor bearer. So like I would go with pastors to like different churches to give different sermons. So like pastors would go from church to church and do like guest preaching, and like the cooler talk, the water whatever you call it talk was like, I was like, what did you just say, Pastor? You sound like a heathen. Like, and like I said, I'm not saying you gotta be perfect, but there's some positions that I need to be perfect at, like a pilot, a bus driver, a pastor. I'm not saying I'll be perfect, but I need you, if you're leading these people to the promised land, I'm gonna need you to be a little bit better than me. So when you're cursing and talking about vagina after we leave church, I'm like, wait a minute, you sound like me. Like, why am I'm listening to you and you sound like me. Like I'm not saying you should be floating on a cloud, but like, I need you to be just a little bit better than me if I'm following you. Like I always look at the people that if I'm gonna follow you, if I'm gonna take your advice, I need you to be doing better than me. Like I need to be something to look up to. So if you're not doing better than me on a spiritual sense, then why am I even listening to you? And so that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth to even like forget religion. Then I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm not gonna let that be one bad apple spoil a bunch. Let me see what everything else is about. But Christianity had me like, whoa. So, but I still, went on my journey with other religions.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to there just being this underlining deity that kind of, you can call it the force. I had a college roommate that was, he would joke around with me and be like, Star Wars is fucking whatever, And then one day we got into the topic of religion or spirituality, whatever you want to label it. He's like, well, no, I believe in like this energy that's in everything, and like, like dude from Staten Island, I love him. I believe in this energy that's in everything, and like we're all connected. I'm like, what do you think Star Wars is about? You're
Exactly.
talking about
Yes.
Star Wars.
Facts.
And then he was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But that's what that's what resonates with me. And you could put a label on it and call it, Buddhism or Christianity or Judaism, whatever you want to call it. You could slap a label on it and market it and sell it to whoever you need to sell to for whatever reasons, authentic and genuine or disingenuous, whatever it is. You could step into that space all you like, but it boils down to you, the person and the individual, and what it means to you.
And that's the thing I spoke about before. Like, I want to get rid of the labels. Like, I have me and my client, and we joke, like, I'll give her exercises and I'll say, all right, we're going to do bent over rolls. Like, I like the word bento rolls better, which is, I'm like, all right, we're going to call it bento rolls, the bent over rolls. She changed the name every time. I'm like, who cares what you call it? Like, as long as the end justify the means, we're good. And that's what, like, I don't want to get into the titles. Like, why do you have to be Republican, a Democrat, Christian, or Jewish? Like, why can't you just believe what you believe? And it is. It could be the Vinny thing. And I said, I do the Vinny thing. Oh, that's awesome. What does that entail? Oh, that sounds similar to the C4 thing. Oh, let's hang out, or maybe talk. We swap, whatever our beliefs are. Like, I don't want to get into the titles, and we're too caught up in titles too much. Like I told you before, like Republican, Democrat. Democrats swear that Republicans are racist. And I went to a gun show one time, and it was nothing but Republicans, the nicest people I've ever met in my life. So friendly, so just so much information. Like, oh, you should get this gun because blah 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 blah. And I mean, I met people's daughters. This is my daughter right here. She's gonna learn how to shoot guns. Oh, how you like? I didn't get any sense of racism, but we get caught up in these stereotypes, and I just want to all these titles, and it's just, I don't know, it just dilutes the experience of meeting people when you put a title on it because they're black or white or Christian or Jewish or Republican or Democrat. Like, you take away from it.
Well, that's one thing that I know you and I both have taken from Jiu Jitsu is being humbled, right? Being put in a position where you are completely you're realized real quick, right? And how things are just kind of left behind at the door. When you walk through there, it doesn't matter your race, your religion, your political, what you subscribe to or your mindset. What matters is like, the authenticity on the mat, right? Like even the belts, right? Like, there's the, the progression of belts, which is like when you receive your next belt or even a stripe on your belt, it's this moment of, it's just like this validating moment of it's just, it sounds so grandiose. And, unless you experience it, it's hard to understand, but then you get to like the ultimate level, right? You get to like the black belt, right?
The pinnacle,
right? Like you're a fucking black belt. And it's like, realistically, that's like, and the old expression is like, that's when you actually start to learn. Like,
right.
And that's the crazy thing, right? You're putting in all this time, effort, and energy into this thing. And you realize that like, oh, and now I get it. Like, now I get it. And we keep on waiting for this validation through these other, we'll just call them belt promotions of life, whether it be stripes or actual belt promotions. And the reality is like, it's already there. Right.
Right.
And there isn't this one particular moment that's going to put you on this new mindset. It's a culmination of all of it. And then it's what you've learned throughout all of it. And then that becomes the next standard.
I mean, I'd say people love you and they hate you, and it has nothing to do with you. But we're constantly try to people please, and it's like, or compare our lives to other people. And it's like, why are you doing that? Like, just stay in your own lane and do whatever you do best. And that's it. Like, you will succeed if you just do what you do best. But like, whatever that is, if that's freaking clipping toenails, like, seriously, clip toenails if you do that well, and just do that. But when you start saying, oh, well, this person is this and that, I'm like I constantly tell my wife all the time, because, she stays at home, and she's like, my friends are doing this and they have this business. I'm like, well, your business right now is being a mother and a wife. Like, embrace that. Like, there's no it's not like you're less than because you do this. Like, it's all relative. Like, so be great at that. And you know what? In 10 years, you feel like I want to knit sweaters, then do that too. But like right now, you're here and embrace that. And that's all good. And we constantly are comparing ourselves. And Instagram doesn't help because
Yeah.
people go on Instagram and it's like, oh, courtside life. Like, dude, stop that. You're not courtside. Somebody gave you those tickets and now you're taking pictures at courtside and acting like you do that. You don't do that. Stop doing that. I know so many trainers on Instagram have so many followers, and then when it comes to money, they're like, dude, how do you have all this money? I'm like, well, how do you have all these followers? Because Clayton's not adding the dollars. Who cares? Like, I barely follow anybody on Instagram, especially fitness, because I'm like, it's all bullshit. It's saturated with, it's basically fitness is now soft porn, because it's like, if you have a booty or abs or whatever, and you show it off, like you get likes. You ain't got to show no exercises to show your body, and they're like, oh, he must do well. Like, what? No, it doesn't work like that. But we get so caught up in all that. I don't even know what you want to call it, man. But just focus on your own shit, and you will be amazing at that.
Yeah, I think two important things. Like obviously, I default to this quote a lot. It's comparison is the thief of joy, and I took a bit of a social media, you can call it a social media fast, I guess, whatever, lack of a better term. But for the last week of the year in December, and it was like this weird sense of like relaxing. Like it changed like my energy towards
Yeah?
it was very
Wow.
weird. And I'm not like one of these people who's like, oh, I'm social, like I'm like, all right, whatever, like,
Yeah.
I understand its value and I understand what
Right.
it contributes. I understand its role, right? But I didn't realize
Sure.
how much of the comparison narrative I was playing in my own head, right?
Right. Yep.
And then I think another big part of that is labeling what you consider success, right? Like
Right. Yep.
what is success to you, and not using someone else's standard, whether it be financial, physical goal, whatever it is, of achieving that success. But like you said, stay on your shit, show up
Yep.
every day to do your shit, give yourself grace on the I don't want to do shit days, which was like Saturday
Yep.
for me. Like I woke up and ate a bagel and then had a slice of, like it was just that day. And I was like, I'm in this space today and I'm just recognizing that. And here I am. I'm staying here all fucking day. Like I'm staying here all day. And
Right.
and as an older version of me would have beat myself up over that, I would have been, oh, you gotta get on the bike, you
Right.
gotta do yoga, you
Right.
gotta do something. And I was like, nah, I ain't doing shit today. Like I'm staying in my pajamas for pretty much the whole day, and I'm gonna watch the Star Wars marathon.
Yep.
I'm just gonna eat carbs all day. And
That's it.
it served me for whatever reason, and I know that's, you're never as good as your best. You're never as bad as your worst. Right. So like when you're
Facts.
riding hot and you got the inertia going and it's fucking, you're rocking and rolling, it's like, great. Do that for as long as you can, but it doesn't last forever. And when you're feeling like a piece of shit and you're on the couch and you're watching jiu-jitsu on your phone and you're eating nachos as you're watching jiu-jitsu class, you're like, you're not that bad either. Right. You're so
right. Exactly. Right. I mean, I believe in like the afterlife. I believe we reincarnate, whatever. And I'm like, and whatever you reincarnate to does not give a shit about the past life. Like you're not, I mean, you have some memories, but it doesn't matter. So it's like we like feel like we gotta do this, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't do anything, but like, oh, I didn't do this. It's like, I mean, at the end of the day, like if it doesn't make your life better, like if taking a nap and watching Star Wars all day helped you, like then you won. Like it's all good, and that's it. That's all that matters is that in that Vin Rock world it worked, or C4 world it worked, and that's all that matters. And doesn't matter. That's why, like when everything was going on in the world, people would say, "Well, how you doing?" I'm like, "Well, in my world, there's no lack, there's no coronavirus. Like I live in my world, which consists of my family right here, my household. That's my world. I was looking into like how do you start your own government? I'm gonna start my own government. It's gonna be the C4 government, literally, because I'm like, I want to. How do I do that? I literally looked up. I have the blueprint right now. It's my world. Like we do what I tell my kids, like, what do you want to wear today? What do you want to eat? Like, you can do whatever you want to do. This is the awesome thing about having that free will and that imagination and using it is you can do whatever we want to do. But we feel like we're like people. I will do stuff and people will say, "Oh, you can't do that here." I'm like, you can't do that here. I can do whatever the fuck I want because it's my world without hurting anybody, without being harming or breaking any rule. But I can do that if I want to, and that's okay. People, how do you? Because I want to. Literally, it's because I want to, and I'm in that space where I'm good with that. I don't care what anybody else is doing. If I see myself going down that rabbit hole, I literally like, oh, stop. I have my script where I say You're awesome. You're magnificent. You're great. You're good. Don't do that. Like, don't even focus on that. Just do what you do, and that's it. And it's a skill. I tell my clients, like, when I tell them about like how we got to get better, like, you got to learn a new skill, a skill acquisition. So when you have these negative thoughts and you want to think positive, you got to learn a new skill on how to think positive. So it's a skill that I got to constantly keep reiterating, and whatever I got to do, whether it be writing down or reading a book at night or meditating, I have different, approaches to making sure that I stay on that positive vibe, but I own the negative too. Because, I learned what we call in Egyptian is mayat. Mayat is balance. Mayat is love and hate. Mayat is negative and positive. Mayat is male and female. Like, it's the balance. You got to have all of that. So I embrace the positive. I embrace the negative. I embrace my masculine side. I embrace my feminine side. Like, me and my wife will have a discussion and I start getting emotional. I'm like, babe, I'm being emotional right now. I need you to allow me to be feminine in my ways and let me have that. I may be emotional right now. I may go back to them like I was being emotional, but she let me have that. I'll go through whatever. I'm like, you left the jelly on the counter and I'm like, she's like, oh, I'm like, just let me have this. I'm venting right now. But I embrace those different characteristics, and we need to embrace that. Like, it's okay. You don't want to be immersed in one or the other, but it's okay to have those.
It's important to have those. Yeah,
Yes.
it's about finding that balance of those light
Yes.
and dark, right? And
Yes.
that's where it gets mucky, right? Because we live in a culture and things are so polarizing at times that we feel we need to subscribe to a certain mindset, or like you said, to go back earlier, it's like this courtside lifestyle. And the dark or the good and the bad or whatever it is, and it's like you have to lean into one and not the other. Where I get that. I totally resonate that same way. I try to operate in that same level, because life becomes more sustainable that way, it's more realistic that way. Things are not just one way or the other. There's so much ebb and flow between the two, and navigating those waters are very difficult. So why are you going to be so reluctant and stringent towards one mindset or one idea or one religion or one political affiliation, when most people realistically probably are somewhere dancing somewhere around that. And finding that balance between the two has been definitely a something that I default to in my own personal life, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I listened to your podcast and you talked about one time you were picking up I forgot who from school, and normally it takes you like 10 minutes, but traffic was crazy.
Oh, my son.
And you lost your shit. I'm like, yeah, Ben Rock, lose your shit. Because it's okay to lose your shit sometimes. Like, sometimes I go in my car and I'm like, I just scream, I hit my bumper and I'm like, and I own it. Or when I do something I fucked up, I go through it. I'm like, all right, I fucked up, damn. And I have my conversation with myself, and I'm like, all right, I go through it, I own it, and it's all good. And like I said, it's okay to be like that. Like I said, you don't want to be one or the other, but you need the bitter with the sweet. You need the positive with the negative. You need the sunny days with the rainy days, and you got to embrace all of them. But now you got to figure out what works best for you, but understand that you're both.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think most people do realize, recognize, and resonate with that. But then it's another thing it's one thing to see it. It's another thing to own it, right? It's one thing. It's like, well, yeah, of course you need the sunny days and the rainy days. Like without the good, I think 9.5 out of 10 people would agree with that as a slogan or a bumper sticker, right? We'd all be like, yeah, I get that. But it's another thing to like, reverse engineer it, right? Or to matrix yourself in the moment and to recognize it, and then to take that and use it for the next experience, or to use that and learn how to navigate through life with that experience and that framework around it. And that's where life kind of becomes fun. Like, yeah, I lost my shit that day, lost my shit,
right? I love it.
But when I reverse engineer it, right, like, it wasn't like it's you have to give yourself the moment to be in that shit, to come out of that shit, and then not beat yourself up over it. And then for me, it's about like really to learn from that. You have to reverse engineer it. You got to be like, okay, well, why did I get like that over this? Okay, well, it's because of this. Well, why is that a factor in this? Oh, because of this. And then go back, go from the leaf on the tree down to the root and reverse engineer to get to the root of the problem. And now, it goes to your point, like now you can create new neurological pathways of your thought and
100%.
your thinking,
Yep.
and saying like, okay, well, this is how and it could be, and it goes back to the previous point, like setting the alarm every day for 4. Any one of those moments could be the next one that puts a new calcified neurological pathway of thought in this
100%.
new way of thinking. So it's like to your point earlier, where you said like, you have to stop dead in your tracks and be like, no, fuck that thinking. I need to do this thinking. And if you literally need to say that out loud, then that's what you need to do, but it's worth it at the end.
100%. Like I tell my clients, like with that, like, man, I forgot what I was gonna say about the point. What did you just say? Go back to what you saying.
I was saying about like the neurological pathways and stopping the way you think.
So like when we do an exercise and like, let's say they normally did 10 and now they do 12, I'm like, what they don't understand, you just opened up a whole different, you expanded your central nervous system by going from 10 to 12. I'm like, you don't understand what you did mentally. I'm like, it's big. You just gave your brain more tools. Or when we do a new movement, I'm like, you just opened up new pathways for your central nervous system. They may think it's something small, but you never done this pattern before. Now you just gave your brain, when it goes outside and you step that way, oh, your brain recognizes that. So when you do stuff like that, you open up way more. So now you like fill the cup up a little more. I don't even know, expand it. And you got it like, and like you said, it's like, if you understand that, you embrace those times when you go to a different place and now you just expanded your, whatever you call it, the neural pathway, the central nervous, and whatever you want to call it. And I translate that to my clients when we do certain things. They may think it's a minor progression. I'm like, you just open a whole shit ton of more opportunities for your brain than you realize by doing that. So
yeah, and then the fucked up part is when you're like, oh yeah, and then you default back to 10. You're like, God damn it!
Right.
Like,
I know, but I tell them that too. I'm like, listen, I'm like, you're not a robot. It's not I don't put a program in your head and you just elevate. I'm like, someday, because they'll be like, oh, last time I did 15, today I did 10. Why is that? I'm like, because last time you did 15 and today you did 10. That's it.
right.
Leave it alone.
Right. And again, you can reverse that too, right? And like, but you can get super granular at that. Like, well, what'd you eat? How was your sleep? What was your day like? How was work? How was this? Did you yell at your kids that day? Like, you don't realize there's all these other things going on
100%.
that lead you to doing 15 or lead you to doing 10, and not identifying in 10 and not identifying in 15 is where the sweet spot is, right? But we want to identify and feel really great about the 15, and we want to feel like a piece of shit when we do the 10, because that's the comfort and convenience, and that's the default mode that we've established. And it goes back to Atomic Habits. We're intrinsically lazy for good reason, right? It wouldn't make sense to use energy towards something that there's not going to be a return on. But yet we set goals and have expectations, and we want to achieve these goals, but we just focus on the goal and not the micro of achieving the goal.
I call it the white noise. Like, I have clients, athletes, and we'll do stuff, hopefully that'll translate into whatever sport they're playing. But I'm always like, there's white noise. You're in this gym with me, relax, control environment. I'm like, when you go play that sport, it may be raining. you may be in on their court. There's all these different moving parts that may change your performance. Be mindful of that. So understand, it looks amazing here, but it may not happen because of that white noise. And it's like, it said, when you come in and you did 15 one day and then you did 10 a day, like, what's the white noise? I don't know. Did you work longer hours? I guess so many things, but just focus on that. Today you did 10 and you've done 15 before. So you can do 15. We're good. It's okay. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, seriously, it's not. I'm not trying to downplay the 10, but I am. It is what it is for the day, and that's it. And we move on. Let's do something else.
Yeah. It's so important to not get too wrapped up in the victories or the defeats, right? Because they're gonna come in so many different ways, shapes, and forms, and they're gonna look so differently. And you just have to recognize them when they're in front of you, and do your best to navigate through them.
Somebody told me, don't let the victories go to your head, and don't let the losses go to your heart. So that's how I look at it. I don't let it go to my head. Like I always tell my kids when they play sports and they get a touchdown, I'm like, this is my symbol. I'm like, act natural, act like you've done it before. So it just gets normal. And I'm like, and if you lose, I'm like, act natural, act like you lost before. This is my symbol. Like when I'm because I'm not one of these helicopter dads. Like I'm like, let them do it. Whatever happens, happens. And so when they start getting crazy, I'm like, I just do this. And they look at me and they go, I know, and they know how to relax and just act natural. Like it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah, I had that with my daughter one time when she got like pulled from like it was like it's like intermittent soccer, like it's like three
Yeah.
on three, like whatever, and she got pulled from the game, and she like walked over, and everyone's like, "What's wrong with her?" I was like, "Oh wait, here it comes," and
Yeah.
she was like, you know, I'm like, dude, it's okay, like
Right.
it's
Exactly.
okay,
Yeah.
like
Listen,
fuck, like it's okay, but I understand, but there's also like the I get it,
right.
I understand,
Sure. Sure.
I get it, but
Hmm.
you're fine.
Right. Sure. Yep. Drop in the
C4.
bucket though.
I love you to pieces, man, and I'm so happy
Same.
that we
Feelings mutual.
were able to connect. We went through this once before, but where can people? I know you're not a promotions guy. Where can people get your services, and where can people find you and connect with you in all your glory?
So I always say when people say, "Oh, how do I get in touch with you?" The best way for you to get in touch with me is for me to get in touch with you. If you're meant to find me, you will find me. I don't really. I'm being brutally honest. I don't give a shit about social media. I don't give a shit about marketing and all that shit. I was into that. And that shit didn't give me anything. But if you have to look for me, I spent hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars on marketing and everything. I didn't get it. It did nothing for me. But that's my thing. But if you want to find me, I'm on Instagram. I don't even know what my Instagram is. I think it's the Soul Warrior 33. And then I have a website, thesoulwarrior.org, I think. But like I said, if it's meant for you to find me, you'll find me. But I think that's it. And I'm
The
here. I'm at your service.
if you're meant to find you, the universe will find a way to put you in
100%.
connection.
I believe that 100%. Won't
So
even
do
have to
I.
try. I
And
always say when things are meant to happen, it will happen instantly, effortlessly, and naturally. That's what we talk about in my household. Instantly, effortlessly, and naturally. So if you're meant to find me, it'll be like, bam, there you go. C4, I need you. I'm
well,
here.
I'm glad that the universe has rewarded me with you
Same
as a
here.
friend, as
My
a
guy.
journeyman, as a
100%.
fellow jujitsu practitioner,
Yes.
because it is instant, effortless, and what was the third one?
Instantly, effortlessly, and naturally.
And there you go. It's all three of those
Are you,
things.
by the way, are you rolling? Because I keep seeing you take pictures, but then
I
you had
did
said something the other day.
I did a little rolling in my buddy's garage.
Okay, so that's what you're doing in your buddy's garage. You're
Yeah, I
not
did.
doing
No, no,
uh
not at the academy. It's just like three of us, all pretty
good.
quarantined in our own lives. So so we're pretty
How's
comfortable.
that going? Is it cool? Like you're learning some stuff?
You know, it's funny. I feel like, you know, everyone's a blue belt, which is nice. So we're all, you know, like, you know, I actually thought about this the other day. Like, you know, like there's no belt promotion. There's
Right.
no, but we're showing up because we love and value what we
Right.
get out of jujitsu, right?
Right.
And that in its own right is, you know, if I never go back to an academy setting for whatever reason, like I plan on it, right? Of course I
Right.
do. But if I never go back to academy setting, I know that I'll still be rolling for true, authentic reason. It's because I love doing it.
Sure. Sure.
So knowing that there's no stripes and there's no belt promotions and there's none of that adds a different feel to it. And I feel like
Right.
my cerebral game, that's elevated in some weird way. Like I
Really?
feel like I feel like I was in a position the other day, my buddy who I was rolling with was, you know, there's three points of attack, right? And I was managing all 3 points. Like, so I
Wow.
was on part with him, and you know, like, so now obviously you step up to a purple, brown belt, black belt. They're doing all of that just to make you do this, and then they're putting you in a different position. But for our
Hmm.
skill set, I feel like my cerebral game I'm becoming more aware of where I am and positionally and how to defend or offensively, how I want to attack a little bit more. So I feel like my cerebral game has actually elevated a little bit.
That's awesome. That's good. I met some guys that I need to get with, and because you know Hamon's down here too, so I've been
Yeah.
meaning to get with him and do some rolling and get some math. But I go to this academy, try to get in at least twice a week. So, but definitely that love is like once you roll and you just like oh, and you know I ask the sensei like, what do I do for this? And it's like oh man, that makes sense. You get that little new, like you said, expand that central nervous system or that neural pathway, add a new tool. Like oh, put that in toolbox. I love that whole experience.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then you don't recognize, and then you're in the position 1,000 more times and don't
Right.
pull that piece out of the toolbox. And then the one time you do, you're like, oh yeah. And then all of a
Yeah,
sudden
literally.
it becomes a whole new thing.
Literally, they will talk about the move, and then I'll get put in that same move we just talked about. I'm like, and as I'm getting put in the move, I'm like, we just talked about this move, and they're like, yeah, we did. I'm like, and I'm getting caught in it, but whatever. It's all good.
That's the beauty of it, right? That's
Yeah, exactly.
That's like this, the beauty of it is just like, again, being humbled by the experience and
100%.
staying in that space and learning from it, and hopefully being able to, pull that tool from your toolbox when the time comes and you need it.
Yes, 1000%. Yep.
Before, always a pleasure, my friend. I'm sure I'll talk
Always a
to you
pleasure.
in like 20 minutes or something, but
Yeah, of course. You know how we do.
I always value and appreciate your time, and
Same.
I look forward to growing more with you on this journey. Thank you so much, man.
Indeed.